What do you do when you walk into a room where you're the only one who looks like you and thinks like you? Sheena Yap Chan noticed that most of the rooms that she's in, she was the only female or Asian person. It didn't feel right, and it wasn't right. She was frustrated and felt stuck. And in her pursuit of wanting to find healing, she started investigating and wondered, am I the only one who's feeling this? Turns out she's not. It inspired her to starting her award-winning podcast called The Tao of Self-Confidence, where she interviews now over 900 plus women around the world who happen to be an Asian female, how they found their self-confidence and what that journey was like. I've also been on the show, and it was a humbling experience to reflect back on my journey and realize how those environmental influenced how I think my voice is. It inspired her to write her book that became a Wall Street Journal bestseller called The Tao of Self-Confidence as well. Sheena is based in Toronto, but travels around the world very frequently to help innovators and others rethink about their stories and how they find their confidence too. So, as we celebrate Asian American Pacific Island Heritage Month and Asian Innovator Stories, I'm very excited to invite my friend Sheena here today. You're listening to Curious Monica by Innovators Box. I'm your host, Monica King, founder and CEO of Innovators Box. Let's dive in.
I don't know how we already got to May, but I am so thrilled in celebration of that to have my friend Sheena Yap Chan. You might have heard her, especially if you've been following Asian American news. I mean, she has been the host of the Tao of Self-Confidence. You want to be able to tune into her episodes because she really dives deep into, in fact, I believe now at this point, she has already 900 plus episodes. We're going to learn more how in the world she managed all of that, asking many Asian American females, how in the world did you gain confidence? Well, that of course inspired her to also be the author of the book, The Tao of Self-Confidence, that came out in 2023. You want to check that out too. Already a bestseller and recognized. And in fact, she has another one coming out in 2025 where you want to make sure you grab her contact so that way you can get the book with you. But I went on to say, we have a lot to dive in. And the first question I really want to dive in with her is like, why self-confidence? And highlight female AAPI story. So Sheena, please.
First off, Monica, thank you so much for having me on the show today, and happy AAPI month to everyone out there. You know, the work that I do really stemmed from my upbringing. Growing up in Canada in the early 90s, I never saw anybody in the media that looked like me. So I was always ashamed of being Asian. You know, I wanted to have blonde hair and blue eyes to feel more accepted or to feel more beautiful. And it wasn't until my 20s where I dyed my hair back from blonde to my original hair color where I finally embraced culture. And in 2015, as I was dealing with my own confidence issues, I was really trying to find resources that cater to Asian women. And I couldn't find any, right? I thought maybe something was wrong with me. I was the only one dealing with this. And I realized culturally, we're not told to talk about our feelings, what we're going through, our challenges. So I decided to start my podcast, The Tao of Self-Confidence, where I interview Asian women about their journey to self-confidence. Like you mentioned, over 900 episodes. I don't know how I do it either. I take a lot of breaks, that's for sure. But really, I wanted to have this as a number one, representation, because representation is very important to me, to showcase all these amazing Asian women from around the world, from different backgrounds, different careers, showing you what it takes to build confidence, right? And also have it as a support system. You know, being able to interview so many amazing women, even like yourself, Monica, you were a guest on the show. It made me realize I wasn't the only one who was dealing with these issues. A lot of us do, it's just we don't talk about it. And this is why having the difficult conversations is very important so we can find ways to move forward and show up as our best self.
So this is now the version you get to know about Sheena of all the research she has done. But I want to circle back to way back in the beginning, because as our innovators know, one of the things that is hard as an innovator is to start. And Sheena, so if you can bring us back way down the memory lane, when you first thought of this, why podcast? Why you, like, what inspired you? And you know, one of it was because there was a gap, but how did you know, like, did you already know that one day I'm going to write a book? One day I want to do this, to do 900,000 plus episodes to research, did you see that coming all the way from the beginning? I'm curious, what was that first initial start that helped you know maybe
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to create a platform to elevate women and especially Asian women just because there wasn't a lot of representation out there. And, when I saw what a podcast was, I thought that made so much sense, right? You can download this audio anytime you wanted to. You can listen to it at any given moment. You don't really have to kind of pay attention. Like, it's there, but not there. And people can still listen to it when they're busy, especially moms when they're giving their kids a bath or like prepping their meals or like getting their school ready. Like, they can just have this in the background and have that quick fix for the day. And so starting was hard, of course, like anything. When you start something new, you're going to overthink, you're going to procrastinate, you're going to doubt yourself. And I was the same way, especially in 2015, there was hardly any Asian people podcasting. In fact, I saw one Asian guy podcasting about the Asian American community or the API community. And because I saw him do it, I said, okay, if he's doing it, then I'm going to do it. And so this is why representation is so important. Sometimes it just takes one person to show you the way and you can go out there and, just make things happen. This is why, I'm very passionate about creating representation because it helps our current and future generations to show them what is possible.
That is so important. And as folks are listening in this month, one of the things I love is that we have a lot of diverse fans and community members. And so whether this is your first time learning about AAPI or a veteran, you're all here for the right reason. I think a reminder of that your voice, whatever that version is important. I like to geek out on details. So one thing I am curious is like, how did you come up with the name, the Tao of Self-Confidence? Because to your point, even though you had that clarity, you could have named it something different. You could have said API female stories. I don't know. Why that name?
Yeah.
How did you know self-confidence was the theme you wanted to explore?
Yeah, I mean, funny story. So
we like funny stories. Please share.
When I first started my podcast and trying to figure out a name, I was trying to be clever. I thought being clever is what draws the crowd in, right? And so I initially wanted to name it The Stripper and have a tagline to strip your limiting beliefs away.
Whoa.
And then, yeah. And then I hired a graphic designer to create the graphic and it was literally a silhouette of a stripper with a whip. And thank God I was in this mastermind of podcasters, of seasoned podcasters. So when I showed them the artwork, they were like, oh, I don't think you'll have the right audience. I think you're going to attract the wrong people. Like 9 out of 10 said it wasn't good. So a part of me was like, oh my God, if I can't even get the name right, how am I going to get the show right? So sometimes I had to take a step back and get clear. And my friend helped me also get clear. She's a spiritual healer. She was like, there's going to be a word in there that starts with the letter C. I was like, okay, letter C. And so I was scouring through like Apple iTunes because there was no Apple Podcast back then. It was still Apple iTunes. And I saw a lot of shows that said the art of. And I was like, okay, I can do that, the art of. But I didn't want to be the next person to say the art of, right? Because there were so many. And then I saw Tao and what it meant, right? Like, especially it has an Asian connotation to it. Like,
could you share more? Yeah.
Yeah.
Why like, Tao? What is Tao?
Yeah. So Tao means the way, right? So I was like, oh, I like that. The way to self-confidence, right? Because there's no one way of building it. We're all different. What way may work for me might not work for you. And so being able to share these different stories shows you the way to self-confidence can be this, or the way to self-confidence can be that. And so also being able to find the word confidence, I was like, okay, that's it. That's how self-confidence. And then I hired the same person to redo it again. Like this time it's, a photo of an Asian woman in an office suit. And then she has a cape
which is amazing. You want to check it out.
Yeah, which is really powerful. And then when I shared that, everyone 9 out of 10 loved it. So that's how the name came about.
I love it. I think one of the things you're sharing in that story is just how important it is to get customer feedback. One of the things,
mistakes.
And make mistakes. And I appreciate you sharing because I actually did not know, as Sheena mentioned, I had the honor of being in her one of the early guests on our podcast, and I appreciated the vulnerable questions. I think you were one of my first interviewer who really pushed me to like share something I've never shared on live. So if you check back, I don't know what I said last time, but the episodes are still out there. And in fact, you have many more that you can learn from. But given that, one of the things that I love to think as a host as well is just how much more you get to also be on the learning seat. And so 900 plus is a lot. So curious, what are the things, well, first, different legs, but first about confidence and AAPI female voices, representation and all of that you care. Was there a surprise that you learned that you didn't expect to learn versus when you first started?
I think it's just learning that we all go through the similar situations. We all go through these repressed feelings that it's hard to share out to maybe our society, our family and friends because, deem like we're seen as weak. So being able to realize that I wasn't the only one, that made me feel a lot better. Like I didn't realize I felt like I wasn't crazy. Like I wasn't crazy. Like this is normal. Like people feel this way, and I realized because I didn't feel alone, it was easier for me to find resources to help me get through it. Right. That was one thing. I mean, I think the fact that people were just so vulnerable was just really eye opening. Some of them were like, this is the first time I've ever shared this to anybody. And I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Like, I appreciate that considering we just met online and you don't really know who I am, but you're able to share the most vulnerable parts of your story in a podcast that people can resonate. And so I'm always grateful for all the things that, all the women who share their story, who, be able to be vulnerable, because being vulnerable is not easy, right? Especially when you grow up in a culture where you're like, you can't show emotion. You have to save face. Like you always have to be the perfect daughter, wife, or mother, et cetera, or the perfect woman. And it's really unattainable, right? And then here we see all these amazing women who have 9-figure businesses, who have 2 million followers on Instagram, be able to share their vulnerabilities and what they've been through. And it's just so refreshing, right? Especially in this world of social media. We live in a world of filters and editing and we just need something authentic.
And speaking of authentic, I'm curious if you can also bring us behind the scene of all your development work. In addition to that, you have wrote your bestseller book that is also the title, The Tao of Self-Confidence, and you have another one coming out. How do you make time to do all of that? Because for those who don't know, if you're just listening, we love you. But one of the things you might not know is that it's actually a lot of work for a podcast and writing. And if you do follow Sheena, and I recommend you do, she produces a lot of content. A lot of writing, Instagram, LinkedIn, tons of news. I think keep track of more AAPI news from her and a few others as well. So my authentic question back to you on top of that is, how do you manage all of it? Because it seems like a lot of work. And is there any new tips and tricks that you've learned over the years that you can share maybe with some of our innovators?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think one of the most important things to know is that I love doing what I'm doing. So sometimes it doesn't feel like work. And every person's different, right? I mean, I don't have kids. I'm not married. So of course, like talking to a mom with three children is like, doesn't make sense because she has 3 kids to take care of. And I think, we just find our own little routine, right? If you can't post content every single day, maybe twice a week, right? You can just start small and kind of start working your way up. It's better than not putting anything at all. If you see me on social media, I'm very passionate about helping women learn to self-promote, because self-promotion is something that most women have a hard time with, right? I get tons of questions about self-promotion. It's like, I get questions like, how much is too much? What if you sound arrogant? What if people make fun of you? And I'm like, people are going to make fun of you regardless of what you do. And if they do, those aren't your people, right? And when it comes to how much is too much, I honestly have no idea. What I say is, if you're not sick of your face yet, you're not doing it, right? Because if you look at singers, if they have a number 1 hit song, they're going to sing it nonstop to the point where they hate singing their own song, but they'll do it because it's a moneymaker. And so you have to see it that way. And especially like the Barbie movie last year made $1 billion. First movie directed by a woman to hit $1 billion mark. Imagine how much promotion happened, right? You couldn't go without the month of July with seeing the color pink, or every single company in the world collaborating with Barbie, whether it was Xbox or Airbnb. There was like a Barbie line from every single company. So I always want to show women like it's okay, right? This comes from like society telling us it's unladylike, but like really, who created that? Probably a man, right? Just say like it's unladylike to do that. But for me, it's like, no, it's not. I mean, especially if you have a product or service that's going to help someone for the better, you share it out, right? You just share it out. And if people say something, just ignore them. I know it's easier said than done. Believe me, I've been there. I know what it's like. I know it can get daunting, but when you can learn to focus on the positive versus the negative, you'll move forward.
So important. Again, for those who, as you might have caught the nuggets, how important the way you think and engage in knowing that it's one step at a time. Speaking of which, that requires a lot of writing and reflecting and preparing. So I'm curious, Sheena, is writing something, a medium that you like doing? Did you already know that you love writing before? And was it something that you rather discovered later on?
To be honest, I wasn't born a writer. In fact, grammar's still not my strong suit. Like, even if I post stuff on social media, my sister's always like, how did you become a writer? Like, look at what you're writing. It doesn't make sense. Like, you missed a spot here. I was like, okay, well, I can always edit it and do it later, right? And so I make a ton of mistakes still, even until now. And so even coming to Canada, like, I had to take English classes as a second language in elementary school because I couldn't put sentences together. And when I did, it didn't make sense. So writing was definitely not something I thought I ever wanted. Like, when there was like English class or writing class or in high school, I was like, I hated it. And for the longest time, I just thought I wasn't a writer. And I realized that, there's no one way of writing. And I think when it comes to writing, it's writing from the heart, writing from your authentic self is really important. And yeah, maybe that sounds cliche or you've heard that so many times, but in all honesty, I talk like I write. Even my friends told me, like my best friends, when they read the book, The Tao of Self-Confidence, they're like, oh my God, I can hear your voice at like saying this as I'm reading this. Like that was the best feedback I got, that it sounds like me, right? And they can imagine me saying it because of course we want to be authentic. We want to be vulnerable. We want to be able to say things that we do in our own voice. And it's not always easy. So yeah, I never thought I was going to be a writer. When this opportunity came about in 2022, I almost hesitated because I was like, who am I to write a book about Asian women leadership? Like, what experiences do I have? And so if it wasn't for another lady who told me, just do it, I said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to go out there and write it. And in fact, I only had like less than 3 months to write this book because it was supposed to come out because it came out last May. And so I just made it happen, right? I think sometimes having a deadline is a good thing. That's what I say. Because without a deadline, you're not going to do it. But when you have a tight deadline, you're like, okay, then you'll make time for it, right? You're going to make time to write this because there's a deadline. And if you don't hit the deadline, it's on you, right? So I just made it happen. I would spend weekends at the coffee shop to write it. And, I started with no clue what I was going to write. Like, I just had an outline. I sent it over to Wiley and then they gave me the green light. And then the day after, I was like, okay, what am I going to write about? I have an outline, but like, it's just a chapter outline. I don't really have an outline for each chapter. And it just kept writing as I went along, did it. And so, also being able to have it in batches made it help too. Like, I didn't have to write the whole thing at once. I could like write the first part in a month, and then the next month I'll write the second part, and the last part in the last month. So doing it in batches is also very important because, it makes a difference when you have to like write a 50,000 word book versus like, okay, I just need to write like 15,000. 15,000 is good. And then when you like, it's not as big as 50,000. So having it in batches does make a big difference. So yeah, I mean, deadlines are really great. Having accountability is really important. And I think if you have this desire to do it, you're going to do it. Right. And I know sometimes it's not easy. As women, I get it. Women do 10 times more things than men. Right. When there's men out there who say they have 8 hours of writing, women are like, yeah, I wish I had 1 hour of writing. Right. Because you're taking care of kids, you're doing chores, you're doing all kinds of stuff, right? Like, you're basically the caretaker for every single person, including outside family members. So I understand that sometimes time is not on your side. But if we really want something to happen, we will make it happen. That I do know. As women, like, one thing I know, especially married women, if they want something from their husband, they're gonna have a million reasons why they need it, to the point where they just get it. That I do know.
We love all the husbands out there. Thank you for being great, part one. Well, no, Sheila, thank you so much for sharing that. There's so many gems of wisdom. And just to piggyback on a few that was, just want to emphasize again for our listeners, it's just reminder that you might not know your best strengths. So again, thank you for your humble sharing that you didn't know writing was a strength of yours. And yet it's the very way of how you communicate authentically is the way it's resonating. And then knowing that even at the very moment when you had the opportunity, you took a step back and like, wait, is it right? I think often we feel like, no, I thought everything you already knew. You're talking about confidence. We thought you already confidently knew. And I appreciate you humbly sharing that it's a journey that you're also continue to go into. Most importantly, did I catch it right that now in 2024 May, this is a 1-year anniversary for your book?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It's so crazy. Like, who would have thought I would have a book out? And yeah, you're right. Just because I talk about confidence and my expert topic is confidence and leadership, I mean, talking about it is easy. Doing it is a whole other story. You're always going to have new challenges that's going to arise. When you start something new, like all those feelings come up again. Am I going to do it? Is this going to work? Am I going to be a failure? What if people laugh at me? Like all those things will always come up, right? Even when I go into an interview or a speaking engagement, I still get nervous. Like I still want to make sure I give the best, interview or the best speech out there so that, people can walk away with something that they can use. And so, just because I talk about it doesn't mean that I don't go through it. I go through it all the time. And I think, it doesn't make sense for someone who's 100% confident all the time. That's just me. Because there's days where I'm like minus 10% confident, or there's just days where I just want to hide from the world and like watch K-drama all day and like eat junk food. Because
Thank you for all the K-dramas and junk food out there.
Right? because we're going to have good and bad days. And the only difference is that like the bad days, we know how to push through it. We know that it's going to happen. We have the tools and resources to pick ourselves. So yeah, we can wallow in it for a little bit. I I do still. I'll eat my feelings when I get rejected for something. Then I pick myself back up and I tell myself, I've been through worse. I can move through it and just, keep moving forward. And I don't do this alone. Community is very important. Like if you see me, I'm all about community. I'm all about, collaboration is key, doing things together. I don't believe in self-made because nothing is self-made. Everything takes someone either to buy your product, to promote you, to talk about you, to whip out their credit card in order for you to make that income the life that you want. So for me, everything is community made. I don't think there's such a thing as self-made, in my opinion.
I love it. It's so important. I think often when we see somebody expert, we assume, oh, this person has everything figured out and can always be in that gem. And I share that back with creativity as well. Some days I feel creative and some days I don't. And I feel at times even worse when I don't feel creative because I feel like I have to be in that pressure often. Almost makes it feel worse. And I appreciate your honesty as well to know that that is something called being a normal human being. And it goes to the bigger picture I know you advocate for, which is stopping perfectionism, stopping the near perfect image. And so to your point, seeing how you've kind of described here, the confidence seeing as a skill set, we have a lot of leaders, entrepreneurs, different audiences who tune in, always looking to upskill, especially at the time of AI growing world, and also how the workplace has changed so much. I'm curious, I guess first part, quick insight, what's at least one way when you feel down, how do you get yourself back up with your confidence? And then I'll ask the second after that to not overwhelm.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. And this is why I love reading other people's stories who've been in a similar situation. Like I love listening to a story because he has the biggest comeback story in America or in the world, I think. And just when I hear what struggles he went through.
For those who don't know him, could you give a little shout out who he is?
Yes, for sure. So he was in the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. He won Best Supporting Actor. He's also in 2 famous movies, Indiana Jones and The Goonies. And so, every time I see him, it actually just pumps me up knowing like, okay, he went through a lot to get to where he is today. Like, not having an acting job for over 20 years. And even when he filmed Everything Everywhere All at Once, it was during the beginning of the pandemic. So he didn't have a job for a year, lost his health insurance and didn't even know what was going to happen. Like the only thing he asked his agent at the time was, am I at least good at this movie? And the agent's like, yeah, you have nothing to worry about. And then now, like, he's just everywhere. And that's why representation is so important. Like he got back into acting because he saw Crazy Rich Asians and got FOMO and decided to get back into acting. And that's why I'm always advocating for more representation to showcase more Asian women who are amazing, we're powerful, we're strong and confident, because those are the type of women we want to see, right? We want to see and show us what's possible. So yeah, for me, I love reading other people's stories, especially like, the hero's journey type of stories, because I mean, those are the stories that are actually relatable, right? Because like I mentioned, we go through downtimes, we go through like depression, we go through like good and bad days. Life is a roller coaster, but how do we navigate that? So,
love it. So important. And to build on that for leaders out there, we're like, okay, great. Monica, Sheena, I'm excited. I'm pumped up. How can I upskill? So in addition to what you shared, other than great, read more, learn more, check out our podcast and these stories, other ways that you recommend leaders in how they can upskill, especially knowing that, the way of work has changed so much and is continuing to change?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important part of everything is taking action, right? We can learn about confidence, we can read about confidence, but if you don't apply the things you learn, then nothing happens, right? Especially in the workplace. I know it's like the API community, we're not taught to go out there and network or talk to our boss or like ask them for coffee or make that relationship with other coworkers. For the longest time, we've been told to work hard, put your head down, never make any trouble. But that doesn't really help us. It actually hurts us because all we're ever seen as is hardworking. And I'm not saying you don't put in the work, but you got to learn to work hard and work smart, right? Being able to be in front of the people maybe you want a promotion with, right? Just having candid conversations, right? Because the more they see your face, the more they remember you and be like, oh, I remember her. She was really good. She would be like a good candidate to be, for that next promotion. Just little things like that. And I understand there's still like unconscious bias that still happens. But if we don't take these little steps to go out there and do it, nothing ever changes. Like a really great example is Kim A, right? She was the first woman to get a general manager position in any major sports team. Not first Asian woman, first woman, right? She became a general manager for the Miami Marlins. And, in fact, she actually took the Miami Marlins to their first playoffs last year in like 20 years. So she has a really great track record. Any baseball fan who knows her knows that she is awesome. She is phenomenal. But it took her, she got rejected from 5 other teams before she even got the position of general manager at the Miami Marlins. So this is why I'm saying, like, we're not like, it's still going to still takes work on our part, right? Because of the unconscious bias. But she was able to make it happen. She was able to show that she can take this team and bring it to the playoffs. And then even then, she actually she left the Miami Marlins team because the franchise decided to hire like a president of operations from outside instead of like asking her, because she knows her worth, right? She knows she can do the job. And so she was willing to walk away with that. And leadership, sometimes leadership can look like that, right? Sometimes you have to know your own worth. You know that you are more than capable out there to do something different. And I know that it's not easy when you see like, well, I'm already at this position. Like, this is probably the best I could ever get. She was like, no, I could do better. There's people out there who want me. I'm just going to walk away and see what else is out there. Right. And that it's scary. Of course, it's risky. It's scary. But that being a leader means also taking risk and like learning to embrace the outcome or embrace the unknown.
I love that. And in fact, you're seeing already the ripple effects, right? Like, I don't know her. Sheena doesn't, unless Sheena, do you know her personally?
I wish.
we are secret fans behind the scene, but her stories inspire somewhere far out there. And your leadership stories out there, listeners, as you are thinking about it, you never know who you are inspiring. And so keep in mind the ripple effect is always further than you think it is. Speaking of which, we are celebrating AAPI Heritage Month. But the little fun fact that you might not know, if you listen carefully, you might have caught, but Sheena is based in Canada. So one of the fun facts I did wanted to piggyback is if there's any difference among Asian American, Asian Canadian, or, what it means, and maybe any other leaders that we can also learn from.
Yeah. I mean,
That was a lot of questions, so you can digest one at a time.
Well, the month of May in Canada is still Asian Heritage Month, so we still celebrate that in the month of May. I think the difference between like Asian Americans and Asian Canadians is there's way more organizations for the API community in America than in Canada, which makes sense because there's 10 times more of the population in America than Canada. But when we do have these organizations or meet up, it's really special because it's like it feels like we just know each other the minute we met, right? Like I remember Asian Hustle Network last year had their first networking event. There was about 30 founders that met up, and it was just a really great time. And we were like, we would love to see more of this happening. This is something that we definitely need in the community. So that's one thing I really do want to see in Canada, especially like Toronto and Vancouver has the highest Asian population, just to have more organizations out there, kind of like Asian Hustle Network, or like, just where we can just support each other and just have that camaraderie. But other than that, I love being Asian Canadian. It's different. For me, I think it's different. It sets me apart from everybody else. And out of that, I love Canada. I love that Toronto is a very multicultural city. I love that we can try different foods from all over the world. We also have really good Asian food here. So that's what I always say.
Always important.
Yes, food's our love language. The only thing I don't like is the snow. So I try to escape as much as I can.
Well, if you need to make a quick visit to the other, you're always welcome. And I know you're often in the States, in fact, for many speaking and collaboration work that you do.
Yeah.
And building on that note, as I've asked, I'm curious if you can introduce us to new people we should follow and learn from. One of the things I want to highlight through these series of interviews is really amplifying where we learn from. And often I think as innovators, even though we want to learn from new perspectives, we might not know where to go. So whether this is for listeners, your first time learning about API communities, or veteran, I think we always have more space to learn from others. So if you can shout out maybe 3 or 4 names or people you think we should learn, don't have to be just female, but maybe Asian innovators who happen to be Asian.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, of course, I'm going to shout out my good friend, Jeannie Chang, because she's just awesome. If you don't know her, she started a platform called Nuna's Nunchi, where she utilizes K-dramas to promote mental health. She also has a book coming out this month on K-dramas and mental health. And, she's also started like K-drama tours, which has been blowing up, and I just love everything that she's done. I think what she's doing makes so much sense because, K-dramas is like the way of life. Right? And just the stories are all relatable. So that's one. Another person is actually a Canadian Asian colleague. His name is John Wang, and he has a podcast called Big Asian Energy. So just that word is really on, it just fires me up when I think about it, because we do have that energy. It's been kept inside us because we've been told never to show it. And it's time for us to show it. It's time for us to step up. And another one is a cohort that I'm a part of called US PAC-wide program. So it's from the US Pan-Asian American Chamber of Commerce. They've had their first women's program where we just collaborate, connect with each other. And it's just great to have a group where you can be supported and feel supported and also support one another. It's really important. Like as Asians, we should be okay to ask for help. We should be okay to collaborate, because that's how we can create the changes that we want to see in this world.
Shout out back to Jeannie and US PAC, who is a good friend of ours as well. Knew Jeannie way before she started Nuna's Nunchi. And so it's really exciting to see all the mega growth. For fans who have been listening to our shows, you might recognize her early interviews with her in our past seasons. So check that out. And US PAC, for those who might not have heard, if you follow me on social media, you might have seen me give a shout out, because that was one of the first supplier diversity events, which I do talk about in our other show, Dear Workplace. So check that out, where they really advocate for all small, medium-sized, people of color business owners, especially for Asian Americans. And that was actually my first entryway, because I was proud to also highlight I was the only female out of the 7 finalists who was presenting. I did not win, but I won my first client, which ended up entering me into the whole world of corporate workshop and facilitation world. And so Sheena's right. Like a lot of what you hear, these names, they're not just like names that are names. Like these are real people who are doing the work. So just want to plus one on that. I look forward to learning your new friend to learn more about Asian Canadian voices. And I love that podcast name. So thank you for sharing that. And of course, everyone's going to also check out your content and work. And I know you have a lot. we hinted already earlier that you have a new book coming out 2025. Can we get a little sneak peek? What's about?
Oh, well, I have
There's a
to keep
secret.
that I have to keep that under wraps. So I think
Okay.
yeah,
We tried,
unfortunately,
guys. We tried.
it will still be on the topic of confidence, so that's all I'll share right now. But it'll be out I think in 2025, early 2025. It might even be ready for pre-order. So, just check it out on Amazon or Indigo. There could be a pre-order link somewhere already. But yeah, it's really surreal to think, I was really happy to write one book by Wiley, but then 2 books is like, wow, right? So I'm just really grateful for the opportunities.
And it speaks, I think, really validation to all the hard work you've done, because one thing that, as you're hearing this conversation, I hope you all recognize that for Sheena to share everything she's done, it's a lot of work. And as she has already hinted, there is a lot of ups and downs to that journey. I'm curious, we didn't get a chance to talk about this in the earlier, but it kind of ties organically how this connects to your childhood, which is like, is this kind of the journey that you thought you wanted to go when you were young? And if not, why not?
No, I did not think I would be doing honestly, I thought I was just going to do a 9-to-5 job, office job, like basically whatever I was told to do. I never thought I would write not 1, but 2 books, be on stages, being able to do workshops for clients, corporate clients, being able to travel to different places. I never thought this was good, but I'm glad that I even surprised myself.
And I bet, like, especially with all the conversations with the community development, the gap of the Asian Canadian community, I don't know, maybe we're going to see something like that. And we know we're like, oh, we know the founder. Sheena was here on the show way before she started that. So stay tuned for sure. It's so inspiring to see such just a full of energy of creating that you continue to do. But I hope you continue to take care of yourself too, as you have said. You shared so many gems of wisdom. Any final one last word of wisdom that you would like to share with our innovators out there in how to continue to thrive? Because this workplace is kind of messy lately.
It is messy. I mean, I think, it's important to just take it one step at a time. It's okay if you don't make big leaps. It's not the end of the world. It's actually the small, actionable daily steps that will yield the big result. It's kind of like if you want to write a book, when you think writing a book, oh my God, it's so daunting. 50,000 words. How am I going to get 50,000 words? But if you just told yourself, I'm going to write a page a day for a full year straight, from the beginning to the end, like you'll have not only 1, maybe 2 books because you were consistent in writing a page a day. So that's why I say just take those small, actual daily steps, learn to celebrate everything you've achieved, no matter how big or small they are, because that's how you also build your own confidence. And make sure to surround yourself with people who will, constantly lift you up. I think people don't understand how important your surroundings are, right? And there's some surroundings we can't run away from. So that's why personal development is very important, so we can work on it.
Very, very true. I think our existing families and built new families that we build throughout our ecosystem is so key. How can people continue to learn from you? I think a few hints we already heard was your social media platforms, your book, podcast. Is there anywhere else that we should also look out for? Or where you want them to go more to?
Yeah, for sure. They can check out my website, SheenaYapChan.com.
Put it in the show notes. Look for that.
They can order the current book, The Tao of Self-Confidence. You can also check out my podcast, TheTaoofSelfConfidence.com, or you can check past episodes. The podcast is on all major podcast directories, so Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. You can also check out my social media handles, Sheena Yap Chan, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. I really love LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me on that. And if you've also on my website, you can also get a free self-confidence personality test. So you can take that test and you get results right away. If you forgot anything that I said, just Google my name, Sheena Yap Chan, because I'm literally the only Sheena Yap Chan on the internet.
Love it. Love it. No, Sheena, thank you so much for joining us on the show. This is, again, Monica at Curious Monica, where we interview innovators around the world to learn about how we can tap into our creativity differently. So excited that we have Sheena Yap Chan here today as we celebrate AAPI Heritage Month. So check out ways to connect with her. We're going to put that in the show notes and reminders again. You can find that in any podcast episode that you are listening to, or also at podcast.innovatorsbox.com or blog.innovatorsbox.com. And if you can't find it, just also send us a quick email, info@innovatorsbox.com. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you soon again. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode at Curious Monica. I'm your host and executive director of the show, Monica King, founder and CEO of Innovators Box. And a little love shout out to our team who made this show possible for you today. From Innovators Box Studios, audio engineering and producing,
Sam Waymerd.
audio engineering assistants,
Ravi Ladd.
website and marketing support,
Cree Pandey,
graphic support,
Leah Orsini,
Christine Eribal,
original music by Innovators Box Studios, and executive producing, writing and editing, and interviewing and all that jazz by me, Monica King. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Please send us a note for any feedback and suggestions and questions that you have at info@innovatorsbox.com. Have a wonderful day and see you soon.